Joe, we get something big here.
Where were we before? I don't know, now it's all crooked.
Well, when Joe get here late, I'm gonna be gone. I got somewhere to be at 5:30.
Yeah, wait, did we just lose clothes? Did we need more or what?
See Dr. McDade.
So get to it, ain't but 2 things on here.
They said get Dr. McDade to the table. You got your hair cut?
I don't work for
Yep.
Hello.
Professor Test.
Oh, did you pass the thing down?
Somebody turned the air on, didn't they?
Yeah, and I ain't had no coat, so I go get my hospital scrub coat, so don't judge me when I put it on. Because it's not a good coat. It is my scrub coat.
We'll give you one more degree. We'll give you one more degree.
Okay, please.
Yeah, it's cold in here.
Hey.
It's cold. I went and sat in my car and to avoid coming in here.
To get warm.
Yeah.
Yeah, then I realized, I ain't had no coat.
You all are skinny little ladies with no body fat.
Sir, I'm in my work for 6 hours. My insurance says I'm just right, sir.
Let me rephrase. Compared to me, you're a skinny little person.
What is your insurance report say?
I am obese. With a capital O.
It was in the rough of the
30-minute range each time.
About your,
The words?
yeah. And I said, buddy, I would love
The more you don't have your picture again.
But look, next week, you move that to the front end.
I thought she would, I should be able to do that.
Yeah.
You're right. We can do that. You sign these contracts.
Yes.
I wouldn't have.
This is Kate.
As far as 3 of these contractors this time.
Said she's running late to their short.
Is that right? We may start that, the vice chair says we gotta start with that, because she gotta leave.
You got to, I'm just leaving if I have time.
May I ask what you have going on?
That's personal.
Oh, okay.
Our business now.
Okay. I thought Dan's gonna ask all that.
And I'm telling my dad the same.
You do sound more like my dad.
I'm gonna be like, Dad, you have a good question.
That's what my daughter would say too. Too many questions. But now Brian's daughter's still young enough that she can't say, Dad, you have too many questions.
Yeah, she's like 16. I'm like, yeah, she was saying. That's all one line, all day long.
I just stopped asking questions.
You don't want to
I don't know, something happened when mine came to the point where they said that. Did you really want to know? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got you.
So we got Kathy.
So do you want me to slide it out?
Joe, we got Scott on here.
Can we slide back up there? This is something else.
I got one. It's probably under my, it's under my.
Did you call back?
Another one says this.
She's on the tab.
I sent the invitation.
Okay, that was like at 1:45.
Time out.
She's been very busy.
You're in timeout.
Dr. Drake and time out.
I saw that message that said call Joe Smith. Did you want to?
I didn't too late.
I hadn't had a call in 6 months. Except for my bride, Miss America.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can go ahead and get started. We have one more board member coming. I'd like to call the special work session to order. And open with middle school, plan update, Dr. Brian Johnson.
Thank you, Board. Last board meeting, Justin shared some information on middle schools and kind of where we are. And so, when that's Justin come up, we have talked some about really wanting to dig into middle schools, and oftentimes middle schools can be like a middle child in a three-sibling family, you know, where you start on both ends with early learning and then you move into secondary. And so really want to dig in and see how we can support our middle schools from that standpoint. So Justin.
I always advocate for the youngest in the three. So looking at middle schools, again, we presented last board meeting an update on restructuring, how we felt like this restructuring could really help middle schools. You've heard a lot about Future Ready Institutes and what we're doing at the high school level, and really to, again, go back to an alignment issue to make sure that we're aligned. We're looking at rethinking our middle schools across Hamilton County and running this with this idea of future ready preps. A couple slides. That you've seen. Again, ultimately we want to go back to this at every opportunity, be the fastest improving district across Tennessee. Something that you haven't seen, this is a study talking about the forgotten middle, and it's talking about middle schools. And again, just some alarming data here. 2 in 10 8th graders are not on target to be ready for college level work. Improving certain behaviors of middle school students, especially when you're talking about academic discipline, improves their readiness for college and career. And then this last one to me is especially telling for middle schools. Is looking at the level of academic achievement that students attain by 8th grade has a larger impact on their college and career readiness by the time they graduate from high school than anything that happens to them academically through high school. So what this tells us is we've got to get middle schools right. Again, a slide that you've seen multiple times. This paints a picture of what we've gone back to that's driving our redesign, that's driving the work that we'll do this spring and this summer to make sure that we get aligned, to make sure that we're preparing principals, teachers, and students to be successful. Again, looking at the middle school piece of the data, we're trailing the state across both ELA and math in middle schools. Highlighted a good piece that the 3rd through 5th grade math where we are outpacing the state. But again, what this tells us is for some reason we're getting kids in middle school, particularly in math, and we're not moving at the same pace. We're not moving kids forward in middle schools. Again, another slide that just shows the comparison of data when we're talking about this is apples and apples comparison. And it's just looking at our data compared to the state's data across 3 years, 13, 14, 14, 15, and 16, 17. Another piece just to re-image the need for additional work and to show the variation 2016-17. We have some very high performing middle schools. We have some very low performing middle schools and very few that are in the middle. This is almost like an inverted bell curve. And if anything, we should be seeing more of a bell curve. So we went into this and we've been talking to middle school principals about some very high level things to get some input from them early on. But some of the guiding questions that go into our redesign and refocus on middle schools across Hamilton County. The first one is, how do we personalize learning? We've got a diverse student body. We've got diverse middle schools. How do we personalize the learning opportunities for every student? How do we better prepare kids for jobs of the future? It can't just start with the Future Ready Institutes. We've got to prepare a foundation for them and a direction for them at middle school that will then lead them in to be able to make a decision about what might be a good Future Ready Institute for them. Of course, how do we improve performance? Ultimately, we want to support teachers, we want to support students. This is the ultimate goal. We want to see kids performing at a higher level so they can access the jobs of the future. And finally, this goes back to, as a district, we're taking the blame for this at this point. We haven't been aligned. We've lost some focus on middle school. So we want to make sure that we're putting the proper supports in place for teachers and leaders so that they can drive these instructional and cultural shifts and meet the new vision for middle schools as we move forward. So again, back to Future Ready Preps. And this idea of we're looking to use this acronym of SPRINT. And when we're putting it up there, sprint to your personalized success, as you can imagine, kids through middle school, it feels like a sprint oftentimes. It's 3 years. It moves quickly. Middle school kids move fast, but this idea of how do we get them to really sprint towards the future? How do we get them to sprint towards being successful? And how do we really reframe the middle school experience so they can sprint towards their direction and hopefully a future-ready institute down the road? There's some flexibility in this. We've got some of this we need to work, but it's kind of an initial step for a vision and a mission. I feel like it's important that we communicate clearly exactly the targets that we're hitting and the reason why we're doing this. So the vision, Future Ready Preps, it's a purposeful transformation of the middle school experience in Hamilton County. They will prepare and inspire all middle school students to excel in high school and beyond. The mission, Future Ready Preps, will personalize student learning by providing students a rich academic experience, supporting their social and emotional growth while preparing them for the careers of tomorrow. I think the mission really points out to the fact that this is not just an academic endeavor. We've got to provide rich experiences, but we also have to address the social and emotional issues that our students are coming to school with. And middle school is such an important piece. It's such an integral piece that if we can get this right, it's really going to set our high schools up for success and our kids up for success. So why are we talking about this? Why do we talk about personalized learning? It's important. It's important that we give students opportunity. We talk about student choice. We talk about student voice a lot, but oftentimes it's a little bit of a shotgun approach. So if we can get all of our middle schools on the same page and on the same vision and mission to think about tailoring the learning towards each student's strengths, to make sure that we're providing things that they're interested in and things that they need to be successful. Of course, enabling the voice and the choice and the what, how, when, and where they learn. We've got to be flexible. And the supports that we put in place have got to be intentional and to make sure that they're in place so that they can master the highest standards possible. So back to this sprint, and again, this idea of sprinting to become the fastest improving district across Tennessee. When we think about sprint, you as a board and the community at large has talked a lot about STEAM education. We've talked about it on a number of occasions. I know that you hear about it from your constituents, and we want to make sure that this is an integral part of the middle school experience. The science, technology, engineering, and math, want to make sure that we have curriculum resources that include digital materials that, again, reflect the revised academic standards across Tennessee. This is a quote or a stat that you've heard from Dr. Johnson before, but we've got to prepare students. There are 42,000 jobs coming that have a median salary of $62,000 over the next 10 years that are directly related to STEM or the qualities and experiences that kids will need to get those jobs. So the P stands for professional learning. We've got to support teachers. We've got to make sure that we're doing all we can to help them be successful, to make sure that they have the pieces in place to get to those student outcomes. And if you look at this triangle, I think it does a very good job of addressing all the components. Got to make sure, of course, that everything is standard driven, that our assessments are aligned not only to the standards, but also to the rigor of the assessment they're going to be taking actually in the next couple of weeks. And then, of course, the best instructional outcomes. And we get those three pieces in place, you would expect student outcomes to be supported and to improve. Rich experiences. We've got to engage kids. We've got to provide them with things that they're interested in. That's part of the personalization of this endeavor. Looking at project-based lessons, opportunities to look at careers that are going to be available to them, and partner with our business leaders across the area to tell us what are the careers that 7 years, 10 years from now are going to be a need across our area. One thing we've got to do is, again, we've got to communicate some of this. Our VWE labs, we've got, I want to say it's 10 middle schools that have VWE labs in them or will have them going into next year. We have robotics team. Delwood just won a championship, and I think this is actually their race car that won. I mean, beat some of the schools across Hamilton County that you wouldn't believe. And I'm not going to say it publicly because it's not about that, but Delwood is providing rich experiences for kids in their schools, and we've got to do that across Hamilton County. Foreign languages. Our middle schools have foreign language experiences. That's something that we've got to advertise across and really impress on kids coming from 5th grade into 6th grade. We're looking at some options for coding and digital literacy certification. We'd love to see at the end of 8th grade for every kid to come out of middle school with a certification that's nationally recognized that says they're digitally literate, they're competent in coding, but it's some skill that regardless of whatever future ready academy they wanted to go to or career they wanted to go to, those are skills that will help them regardless of the career they choose. Then looking at individualized learning, which we talked about a second ago, but just this idea of customizing the instruction, allowing student voice and choice. But I really think the last bullet's the biggest one that we've got to address. We can address those two, but the student ownership of learning through self-goal setting, them setting their own goals and monitoring their own progress is really going to be a game changer. When you go around schools and community, it's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. You hear people talk about apathy, right? Apathy in students. Well, if we can individualize learning, we can get them to own their own learning. Apathy is taken care of. And that's really what we're trying to do through this individualized learning. This is one that we feel is extremely important, nurturing environments. Kids are coming to us with issues that quite frankly, the majority of us don't have experiences with and just don't think about day to day. We have a number of kids. I saw a study the other day that was talking about kids in college, and it's over 40% of kids in college worry about where they're going to get food each day. And that trickles down to our schools. So we've got to have a nurturing middle school environment that addresses behavior. We'll emphasize positive behavior support. We'll emphasize restorative practices, mindfulness. We want to make sure that we have schools and an opportunity for every kid where they can come to school and they have a sense of belonging and that they are part of the middle school community. We want to address some cultural competencies across our staff to make sure our staff and our teachers, our principals, our front office people, our cafeteria workers, that they are trained and that they are aware of how to deal with different cultures and different backgrounds and students that are coming with trauma, that are coming with poverty. That's some work that we've got to do to support our staff. And then, of course, character development. So really, I think that if we get this right, here's some things that we'll measure, that we'll track. Discipline problems should decline. Student achievement should go up. When we do school climate surveys for parents and for kids, we should see climate surveys that reflect this idea of having a nurturing environment across our middle schools. This is a key component in getting middle schools right. And then technology access. I think we've been kind of beating around the bush a little bit on this, but we're looking through the budget this year to go 1-to-1 across all of our middle schools this coming year, making sure that every student in Hamilton County has access to a device that's their device that they can use throughout their middle school career to help further their learning. So this quote on the side, and we put this in here intentionally. technology will never replace great teachers, but technology in the hands of great teachers is transformational. We don't want to put the impression out there because we're going one-to-one or that we're talking about personalized learning that teachers don't play an integral part. For this to be successful, we have to support teachers and we have to train them and we have to get great teachers and retain them. So one-to-one is not the cure. It's a tool. It's a component of this that will help us move forward with middle schools, but without great teachers, the technology is going to be obsolete. So, looking at, again, future-ready preps and this idea of sprinting. STEAM education, professional learning, rich experiences, individualized learning, nurturing environments, and then access to technology. We really are excited about getting this going and having some future conversations about this with you and with educators, just to give you an idea before we take questions of some of the next steps. What we're going through right now is looking at digital curriculum, looking at instructional materials. Actually, when we went through textbook adoptions, our teachers are even thinking about this same thing. They're wanting access to digital textbooks instead of traditional textbooks. We're going to engage, again, continue to engage middle school administrators and teachers to further define what the transformation looks like. We're going to continue to work on our professional learning sessions for administrators and teachers throughout this spring to make sure this summer we're supporting teachers to be prepared for the one-to-one. We're going to determine device allocation for schools. So we've got some schools that have different devices. We want to make sure that we're getting a quality device in every kid's hands that's uniform across middle schools. And then we've got to do some work on the logistics end of device distribution, fall of 2018. The good thing about this, we had pilot in Howard and Red Bank feeder pattern a couple of years ago, so we learned quite a bit about the logistics, and we'll partner with those feeder patterns to help us think through what are some of the mistakes that we made during that can help ensure this is a smooth transition this fall. And then train school counselors on the social emotional learning framework. We want to make sure that, again, we're supporting students not just academically but with their social emotional needs, and to make sure that they have a nurturing environment in middle schools. And then implement middle school career exploration course. We've got some work to do there, but again, we want to make sure that we're not just waiting to high school for them to start thinking about where they're going, but this is really a future prep middle school experience that they have some access to career exploration. Any questions or anything that we can clarify?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
No, I saw on Golden Girls one time, they asked, can I ask a stupid question? And they said, better than anyone I know. So I'm going to ask a stupid question. Is this nurturing environment, is this the plan that we have going now? Is this something new? Because what we're doing now is not working. The behavior in our schools, we keep talking about supporting our teachers. The best thing we can do to support teachers is teach children how to behave. And we're dismal failures in just a lot of instances from elementary all the way through high school. A lot of teachers feel like if they don't get a lot of support from the administration, when things happen, it seems like the teachers are always the one blamed instead of the students. And I don't know if that's coming from some of these positive behavior intervention and supports. I have no idea what that means. I just don't know what it means. Kids need to learn to behave and respect other people. But they have all these fancy names for things and nobody really knows what they mean. And teachers don't see that students are respectful of them. And those are the things that we can do more than a raise. And the teachers have always said this, more than a raise or anything, they would appreciate the fact that if kids would behave in school, they could learn a lot more. I think this is where a lot of the failure is in the middle school. This is where kids really start pushing the envelope is in middle school. And I'm just not real sure that if this is what we're doing now, it's lacking in just lots of areas because teachers don't feel like it's working, or at least the ones that I talk to don't feel like it's working. Like I said, I don't know that that's just an answer to is this what we're doing now, or is this something new we're going to try to do?
So bits and pieces. While I'll explain that, I think that we've got some schools that are implementing some of this very consistently and are seeing results. We don't have a consistent approach across the county, is what I would tell you. The mindfulness piece, the restorative practices, that is not something that's really made any traction in our county. So that's a new piece. The positive behavior, that's something a lot of our elementary schools have put in place. The bottom line, though, Ms. Thurman, what it does is sets expectations. It tells kids. I firmly believe that the majority of kids that we have, if we tell them what the expectation is, and we're consistent with how we approach it, the majority of our kids are going to do. Now, you're always going to have that 5%, right?
The 5% is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know. And
they're the ones that make sure that the other 95% don't learn.
And we need to put some things in place to support those students while at the same time protecting the instructional time in the school. And that's what we're trying to do here. This is the first time that, since I've been in the county, that there's been an intentional focus across all middle schools to think about what we're doing to address this issue. There are some things on the back end that we've had initial discussions about for students that we're not having success with, or there are alternatives in other settings, or there are alternatives for how we can use the one-to-one to really support their learning, maybe in a smaller environment, not necessarily outside the school, but in the same school building, but a smaller environment. So this will be a comprehensive plan that looks to address that. And what I will say is what's new about it, it's the first time that we've intentionally looked at this as a district across middle schools to get some consistency and to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to support teachers.
Great question, Ms. Robinson.
I guess I have a lot of thoughts about this because even though I do not have a middle schooler, I have been terrified of middle school since the time that he was in my womb. So, but also really recognize how important middle school is. So I really appreciate that the district is taking a look at this. But again, I still have a lot of thoughts about it. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to kind of share a few of them with you. So yeah, I hope that's okay. You know, when I think about what makes middle school so important is the fact that it's kind of the last time to really like make a strong impression on a child before they become this hormonal teenager, like doing things they probably shouldn't be doing in high school. And so I'm just going to be real honest with you. I get a little nervous like with what you've presented because I don't think in middle school I don't think I really care about what my career is going to be in middle school. And I'm just being really honest with you. I don't really know that I want my sons to like be thinking about what their career is going to be whenever they're 13. And it's not that I don't want them to start gaining the tools and the social skills and the education to know what they want to do whenever they grow up. It's just that it's the last time as a parent that I think that I would get to really help them even explore what their options and like what, you know, the highest, you know, imaginational thing that they could think of would be in middle school. And so I guess I just wanted to kind of say, I realize where we're going with this, and I know that probably sounded harsher than really what I even meant. It's just that I just hope that with this middle school, you know, retooling that I am so excited that we're doing, I just want us to really think through how we don't make it all about career readiness, because as a parent that makes me worried.
Sure, and maybe I didn't voice that the way I should. We're going to do some career exploration, but when you look at these things right here, the robotics competition, which encourages kids to collaborate, to be creative, you think about coding, digital literacy, those fall under career exploration, but the reality is that's a skill set that you need for college, a skill set that you need if you want to go to the military, if you want to go to technical education, if you want to just get out of high school and start your own business. I mean, those are skill sets that kids are going to need. So I probably should have framed that in a way that we're looking at this as a robust way to address skill sets that kids are going to need regardless of the path. Yeah. Career exploration needs to be a part of it, and that's not the main focus. The main focus is the rich experiences.
It's exploration rather than specific training.
Sure.
That's helpful to hear, and thank you for that. I think, you know, I just think that I wouldn't be doing the right thing if I didn't express that. So, you know, we've been talking a lot about, you know, like what will Howard Middle School look like, and so then for me personally, like that's been really exciting because again, I'm very passionate about middle school because I'm terrified of it mostly. And nobody likes middle school, and no one's getting it right either, in my opinion. Like, so I think it's really exciting that Hamilton County's like taking a conscious effort to like retool middle school, but just, you know, just even thinking through what Howard Middle School could look like, it's really, I've even gotten to kind of look at, oh gosh, it'd be so cool if we had this focus on this or that, and so I just wanted to kind of state my thoughts on that, and just encourage us to really think about how we make middle school not, you know, not so sterile, and, you know, for the kid that was like me, who like sweated every single day of middle school, make it exciting for them to go to school, so.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Galloway.
Yes, I hope what I can say can help both Ms. Thurman and Ms. Robinson, because what I found from teaching is this: the problem that Rhonda's talking about with those kids are some of the very kids that having some direction. That the problem is now with their disciplines, they don't have any direction. So giving them some direction towards something they might be interested in early on is huge for them. The other end of that, Tiffany, is kids that get a lot of support, like yours are probably going to get. They're going to do fine anyway. So this gives everybody an opportunity to go as far as they want to with it. Yet it helps those kids that are really struggling because they don't have any direction, and doesn't give them a direction.
Kids need parameters. Mr. Smith. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Just a couple of things. I kind of share too a little bit with what Ms. Robinson said about thinking about careers in middle school. Just a little kind of side story real quick. We had a 13-year-old kid that was referred to us not too long ago that had been arrested 3 times for painting graffiti on buildings downtown, and I think you saw the work. He was referred to us from juvenile court. We gave him cans of spray paint, gave him a wall, and said, you paint what you want to paint. And it's unbelievable the work he did. Hooked him up with an art therapist, and 6 months later, this kid, behavior, academics, he's not the same kid. So I would hope that we focus not so much on what career is going to be in middle school as to what is your passion, what do you love to do, and somehow kind of hook that up. I really love every time we talk about school counselors, because when we talk about school counselors, I think we're talking about school safety. And, you know, there's a lot of questions about, well, what are we as a district doing for school safety? And we want to talk about LOPs and SROs and all that's important, but so is counselors. So I love it when we talk about what we're doing with adding school counselors. Now my question, my concern. Back in the days when we had, you know, textbooks, and we'd have a lot of middle school kids that would come in, and next thing you know, I've lost my textbook, or it's been stolen, or whatever. And the parent didn't have the money to replace that or to buy another one. And fortunately, over the years, we were able to get some textbooks, so at least we'd have one there at the office. But what happens to these kids that, you know, I love this, that they're all going to get a device. The wisdom of that is unbelievable, and I appreciate that we're going to do that. But I do worry about, and this may sound terrible, but I worry about parents taking those devices and trying to pawn them, for crying out loud. What's going to happen to those kids if device is stolen or lost, or daddy goes and pawns it to buy a bag of dope?
I think it's one of the lessons that we learned at Red Bank and Howard, and we work with Dr. McDade. Parents can purchase insurance. It's really inexpensive. Do you remember? Like $15, $20, $25 a year. What I will say though is that's very few and far between. And what we were, I could talk an hour about this because it's amazing the trickle effect of what happens when you put a device that kids never had it before, and it's their computer. They take care of it. We had Chromebooks, and the first year of Chromebooks, they were Samsungs, and it was first generation. They were terrible. I literally, you could walk down the hall and the screen would just crack, right? Devices are so much better than that now. But what we did in that instance is we started looking for those kids that, what are you passionate about? We've got some kids that no training at all, could figure out how to replace a screen in that Chromebook. So instead of replacing the whole Chromebook, we started purchasing just screens, and we purchased them 20 at a time. And we started, we called it the Chrome Squad, but it was basically the Geek Squad at Red Bank of this group of kids that, you know, they were ahead in their courses, so it wasn't taking away from their academics, but they had a block a day. They set up an email account, just like a help desk. The emails would come to them. They would disperse out into the high school, fixing Chromebooks. It turned into fixing teacher computers. But when you put these devices in kids' hands, they take care of them. You are going to have one or two. I think we had two at Red Bank that somebody stole it from their house. We never could figure out who, or if the kid just had it. So we're going to deal with some of that. But the benefits of it far outweigh the one or two kids that would do something like that.
Yeah, I'm really excited that we're going to be doing that for our middle school kids. But let's career's important, but passion. Let's discover their passion and then build on that.
Just if you real quick, go back to slide 10 very quickly, and then I want to talk about slide 11 just a little bit. So
Tell me when to stop.
10, go to 10. Vision, mission.
I see bottom corner now.
So a couple things I want to point out is one, and I concur as a parent myself, thinking about having had a middle schooler and thinking about an elementary age student to become a middle schooler. You know, ultimately we know that the end result is we want them to have a career. But in middle school, I'm a huge proponent that students don't know. Let me use myself. I got in college as a freshman and wasn't 100% sure about what the end result, is going to be. So we don't have the expectation that students are going to come into middle school and know. It's about exposure, and it's about what they want, and then also about the social emotional components that we understand are so critical at that age as they're going through that maturation and transformation. But then really, that next slide, Justin, if you will. When we talk about personalizing, I really point out the tailoring component, and then in that second line, the voice and the choice. And so tailoring it and the voice and the choice is something that is critical as we start talking about why are we moving to a personalized environment, why are we increasing technology access, why are we looking at really what those rich experiences are, because we want students to have a chance to feel it, see it, touch it, and hopefully not be a graduate of college and be for the first time figuring out, oh, I don't want to be this, or I don't want to be that, or what is really my passion. And so I completely concur, and it's really more about the exposure at the middle school level than it is selection. So they're not necessarily going to select that I want to be an electrician, or I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a lawyer. But it's really more about the exposure and richer exposures to those opportunities that exist for them. So then I'll point us back, if you'll go all the way back to the beginning, Justin, I'm not hitting it, but just go back to the very beginning. Right there, just right there. So as a father thinking about a child that's going into our middle schools, my children, I want my child to experience success single year. And I know we have that same mission and vision and desire for all 44,000 of our kids. Candidly speaking, that ain't good enough. When you go to the next slide, Justin, that ain't good enough. And then you go to the next slide, that ain't good enough. So we know we've got to attack middle schools intentionally. We've got to have rigorous curriculum. We've got to have resources for our teachers. We've got to increase technology access. We've got to make sure we're addressing the social emotional needs for our kids. We've got to dig in at this level, because this is a gap for us, and make sure that we address it systemically, and it's not a one-off, one-shot type of program, but it's really system thinking about how do we get the counselors what they need, how do we get teachers what they need, so that we can ultimately get students what they need. So there will be some middle schoolers that know when they come out of middle school, this is exactly what I want to do, but honestly, the vast majority of them, it's really about exposure. We're going to have conversation, because all the 8th graders y'all can help me with the name of the program, but the chamber has a, what's that program called where they go with this expiration day, career crunch. And so what we really want when they come out of that, when they get ready to go to that career crunch and they get ready to step in ninth grade, in a perfect world, they're going into that career crunch having been exposed to kind of some different opportunities with some real background that they can walk into and ask purposeful questions about careers and ask purposeful questions about, you know, what are the pathways? How do I enter and access? What does it look like for me to have to go to TCAT versus going to a 4-year versus going on to get my master's or my doctorate? And so it's really about experiences. This isn't about tracking kids. It isn't about you know, them selecting a specific career. It's about really digging in and determining with our students what is it that we desire that they have. So again, there's much work to be done on. Much input to be received, much dialogue to have. We had the teacher group in here yesterday, and we had middle school teachers stick around for a little while, and got a lot of input from them on some ideas and some thoughts, and had principals in before spring break and had a lot of dialogue with them. We'll continue to have dialogue as we go forward to make sure that we're building for our middle schools what it is we desire. So.
I've got one last question about it. Are we kind of taking the same approaches like with Future Ready, where we kind of create like this brand for our middle schools? Are we taking like a similar approach to that?
Not as individualized, like we were saying. There's the
Okay.
Erlanger Institute of Health
Right.
Sciences at Howard. No, what
Okay.
again? Probably should have said passion or experiences.
I asked that question because I just think that using the word passion actually like makes the whole presentation feel so differently.
Yeah.
So if we do create a brand around it, like any type of just brand in general for middle schools, like maybe just using the word passion.
Well, and the idea of the future ready preps and sprinting,
Yeah.
you know, and we're headed towards success. And I think a lot of this is about just recognizing how important of a 3-year period this is for students. And we've got to be very intentional about our approach across the county to help kids be successful.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Anyone, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Jasper.
I hope that, with the creation of our inner districts, you might say our learning communities, I hope that you'll give these learning communities an opportunity to put their own spin on these things. For example, we have people in schools that are doing great jobs with this. We know that. CCS, CSLA, Arts and Science, some of our other schools that have an opportunity to spin their curriculum to a way that meets what the kids have. We need to look at somehow that our central office folks look at what they're doing that's so good. I may be one of the few people here that knew what a junior high school was all about, that knew what open education, that whole movement was all about, and the various sundry things that we sell and come along with every few years to change things. We need to be smart and go back and find those things that work. I went to a junior high school, but I'll tell you right now, it was fun. It was exciting. First year you get to take an advanced band class, advanced music class, you get an art class, you get sports and competition, you had summer camps at school, had language camps at school in the summertime. It was an exciting place to be. We need to allow our administrators to put their own spin on these things. We have some intelligent people in this county, and we need to give them an opportunity to get with their teachers and say, how can we make this work in our community, in our learning community? I'm a big fan of language arts. But I'm probably a bigger fan of foreign language, because I know foreign language works kindergarten through 12. You give little kids an opportunity, and I remember the old open ed concept. But a lot of that was seminar and camps that you had during the school time and in the spring and on breaks. These things can happen, but school, we've got to turn this thing somehow where learning and going to school is fun again. That it's safe again, it's fun again, and kids are there and they're learning and they're excited about their learning. I think that can happen, but I would like to see it come from our learning communities, giving their own spin on these things, and let's allow them to do what they feel that will work.
Good points, Mr. Cashman, thank you. Dr. Ross, anything else you want to say, time
Yes, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much. It's a lot of hard work. Thank you very much, sir. Next, our budget presentation, Dr. Johnson, Christy Jordan, Don Hall. Dr. Johnson, how do you want to proceed?
Yeah, we'll jump into it. If you'll put it up and click it, I think or somebody's click. I'm gonna be in the way. Check your mark.
You're in the way.
I'm in the way. Maybe if you move your head over.
Oh, there we go.
All right. Good deal.
Oh,
So we'll take you through this real quick and make sure much of this you've seen and want to give way to questions and things that you may have as we go. We always start here with being really fast and board goals that you all established and knowing that we want to adhere to these and make sure that we're aware of these. Really, as we continue to go forward, a safe and clean, orderly environment, high standards for accountability, effective and qualified teachers, teaching character education, value and diversity, parent involvement, and a comprehensive plan that provides clear and open lines of education. And so when we start to talk about kind of focus areas out of that, accelerating achievement and making sure our students are future ready, and great teachers and great leaders and engaged community and efficient, effective operations are what aligns to the board goals. I'll go back to what Mr. Chessman just spoke to. I think one of the emphasis for the development of learning communities is to ensure that our schools we're learning from one another. And so, but I'll speak to Angie Cass, Mr. Chessman, in your area when we talk to her about the middle school fall. She's got some ideas that we want to leverage, and then we want to share. She wants to be first. She assured me she wants to be first. But she want to leverage what we know. And then also from the capacity building community, clarifying and go-to and strengthening our feeder patterns are all focus areas. So just some key takeaways from the budget. We have had 6 budget meetings, so we'll have a total of 6 budget meetings. All documents are online. We've had 23 listening and planning sessions, and there's alignment to the investments to the board and community priorities. This budget proposal, when you see the base budget, it is $1 million below the base budget last year. And we're presenting a balanced budget, but it's also a budget that allows us to invest in key areas that I think we've seen from community, from you all's priorities that are there. So, Christy, if you'll take us through what's available and where we are.
okay. One of our key goals this year, of course, is budget transparency, as always. And as Dr. Johnson mentioned, you know, there's several things that we've done to try to work toward that. Besides the many meetings, posting online almost real time with our budget hearings, and trying to make everything understandable. So what you've got before you tonight is the budget notebook that you usually get. What this is a compilation of everything that we have done, all of the meetings that we've had up until this point. So we divided the budget into kind of bite-sized segments leading up to the total document for tonight. Another major goal is fiscal responsibility. That's one of our basic goals, and as Dr. Johnson mentioned, our base budget starting point is $1 million less this year than it was in the prior year. Last year, you remember, we adopted a budget of $372.6 million, and even after we added our step increase for positions and our TCRS rate that the state passes along to us, we are still going to be starting this year at $1 million less than our adopted budget last year, and feel that this is a very good demonstration of fiscal responsibility. Preliminary, want to tell you a couple of things that have changed, some updated information. Our last meeting was March 22nd. Since then, we did meet with the county trustee, and we got some good news. So I'm excited to tell you that there were some pilot agreements that we did not know about until we met with the county trustee. I mentioned to y'all last time about the Volkswagen. They brought on the second plant, so we knew about that. What we didn't know about was that there were some other ones out there, and so we've actually had some increases from some other new pilot programs. And as a result, what you're going to see in our revenue projection now is an additional $1.1 million above what you saw at the meeting on March 22nd. So you're going to see $900,000 in pilot agreements and $200,000 in the basic property tax increase, and what that's going to do is give us about a 2% increase in our property tax, and then it accounts for these additional pilot agreements. We are still waiting to hear from the state on the BEP. So what you've got is our best estimate at this time. But just wanted to let you know that our revenue is $1.1 million above what you just saw. And in a future slide, you're going to see that where that expense is going to be listed is going to be on the salary funding line. You'll see that a little bit later. Just a recap of one of our sessions in, I guess this was the February session. Of our general purpose operating budget, 80% of our total budget expenditures are spent on people. That's salaries and benefits. So of our $370-something million budget, it's 81% is salaries and benefits. That's the first piece. The second piece is the people piece. So of that 81%, of our total budget, 93% of our people camp, 93% of our head count is school-based. So that only leaves 3.5% of our people in operations and 3.5% in central office. So we feel like this is a very important one of the budget by the numbers. This is something that y'all had expressed an interest in. Okay, so where does our education dollar go? So out of every dollar of money that we spend, 82 cents is spent on school-based personnel and materials. 4 cents is spent on transportation. 10 cents is spent on operations and maintenance of buildings. This is things like your custodial services, utilities, and your basic repairs and maintenance. And 4 cents is spent on central office support and administrative services. One thing that's important to note about that, we're not just talking about central office here, because that includes not only IT, HR, finance, office of the superintendent, office of the board. That also includes trustee commission of almost $3.9 million and our liability insurances. So even with all of that, still only 4 cents of every dollar is spent on admin costs. This is one of the lowest. It actually is the second lowest of all of the large systems, of the 6 or 7 largest systems in the state. So that's a very important, good point to know.
So we think it's important that, as we talk about our budget, that we have obviously adhere to what's important to you as a board and the goals that you establish, but then also we want to make sure that we engage the community. And, going fast and if you want to go fast, you can't do it alone. You've got to do it together. So just looking at it by the numbers, we've had 23 community meetings, ambitious number of community meetings. And I want to commend you all because you've been very visible at the ones in your districts, and I appreciate that. Over 1,300 community members in attendance. So when we talk about from the start of the school year to where we are with those 23 meetings, we've had really strong turnout and appreciate the engagement of the community in those. Also 3,000 data points. So you'll remember at the last 14 sessions, I believe it was, that we asked our community to kind of to really establish what the priorities were and to really use those dots in a way from a budget planning process to inform us as to what was important to them. and really establish 5 key areas. Obviously, safety, being there, STEM education, the arts, social emotional supports, and community schools and supporting that work. So you've seen in our budget a commitment of $1.4 million appropriated towards safety, security, and support. And I know you just mentioned that it's not necessarily one thing; it's a combination of things, from infrastructure and visual management systems to controlled access doors to ensure that our front entrances are secure and an adult has to give a visitor access. An increase in counselors that we're proposing, you'll see again here in a minute, and some additional resources to support additional school resource officers.
It would be 2.
I think it just all depends on probably about 3. It just depends on the sheriff and what the numbers will work out at. From the community meetings, these were the top 3 areas. Capital being one, kind of came out. 20% of people said that. You've seen these numbers in a format. 14% said technology would be number 2. It was also tied with our teachers being 2, 3, 2A, 2B. And so just kind of looking at that. Christy's gone through this, and you see kind of how it's appropriated, accelerated student achievement. You see the commitment, the overarching commitment that we're making there. You see future-ready students, the commitment there. Great teachers and leaders, the commitment there. Engaged community, the commitment there. And efficient, effective operations, the commitment there. So when we look at accelerated student achievement, we're proposing that 7 art teachers, and I think I shared with you, we'll continue to share that as we look at that number. We had conversations with our lead art teachers and really trying to work within the budget from the standpoint of that number, and so that number may shift some just depending on what resources and things that she wants as she continues to work with teachers. They've got kind of a wish list, and we've asked her to go back and kind of rank order some things and work within the budget number for that. Also increase counselors, and so we'll work with schools. We talk about arts teachers to go back to that, and we'll see it in future planning, kind of what we need to be mindful of. But with our teachers, we need about 25 total to have an art teacher, a visual art teacher in each school. And candidly speaking, if we could post 25 positions to find 25 applicants would be kind of tough. So we are hopefully phasing this in, and we'll have to continue to hope for revenue and resources to be able to continue to build on it. 7 counselors, and just so you know, as we talk about this number 7 in particular in those 2 columns, it's not necessarily that it'll be 7 full-time people. It'll be 7 FTEs is what we've got in the budget of full-time equivalencies. But we'll work with schools from the standpoint of some of them have a half-time counselor, they're paying for the other out of title, or they're being creative with it. So we want to see how we can maximize the funds that we have there working within schools, and we want every school and every school community to feel the impact of the increase in these areas. And then the 7 ESL teachers, and if we go back to counselors, we need about 13. We need 13 in the elementary level to get us to the recommended ratio. And for ESL teachers, we're proposing 7. We need approximately 23 of those to get within the recommended ratio. And so, again, with all 3 of these areas, the licensure piece is so challenging that if we could post 23 ESL positions, we would probably have some challenges with acquiring them. But we do know we are making a commitment in these 3 areas. And obviously the arts and social emotional support are 2 areas that we heard very clearly from the community. Future-ready students, you heard some about the technology commitment. We want to make a significant increase in the number of devices that our students have access to, as well as instructional material for our teachers and resources as we look at making sure that they have the most quality materials to support teachers, support students with, and so you'll see the commitment there. So we're proposing $5.6 million to be invested in salaries. And so obviously that collaborative conference and to go through and the way that calendar falls and the way our budget season goes, we are a little bit ahead of where collaborative conference difference it is from that standpoint, but know that we want to appropriate funds to be able to support our employees. You see in the bottom right-hand corner kind of a comparison of how our county ranks to first-year teacher salaries. Keaton's team, as they continue to look at this and being competitive, but of specific note, and I don't know if this clicker will work, I'll point out Cleveland and Bradley County, who are pretty close to us, that, you know, we have to continue to make up ground with. And then we also have to be mindful of Nashville and Rutherford. You see where Noxie is very close to us. So just from the standpoint of really surrounding counties and then a couple other pretty large urban districts, we have work to do to stay on par.
Can I say, Dr. Johnson, I know when I did some research on this last summer, we were ahead of the diminutive Polk County at the beginning teacher stage, but at no other stage were we ahead of Polk County. So our increases may not keep up in some areas.
And then a commitment to New Teacher Academy, where there's some investment in coordination as well as the mentorship of our new teachers when they come in. We want to make sure as teachers come in that they're supported and they're mentored. And our teachers across this district do a great job of really taking teachers in. It's funny, I was at CCA and I was talking to a teacher that came from one of the neighboring counties. We left her name, but she said that she was so ecstatic about being in Hamilton County, and she said one of the things that is the two things that she said was the best was the training, and she said also just the support from the other teachers. And she told me, and I'm holding to it, that she's telling all her friends in the county that she was in, that she's telling them to come to Hamilton County. So, but I think in order to continue that, we know we have to be intentional with our new teacher efforts. So in regards to the engaged community, I think we already saw last week Jill and her team, Melissa and John, present some information on really the work in the learning communities and what can be done there from the standpoint of making sure that the community school model goes forward and we continue to increase the support there. So you see that commitment there. And then effective and efficient operations, transportation and safety. This is just pulling out the line item detail that you have and the major investments, and then campus support as well as school safety and school resource office, which we talked about. I think it's important to note that $24+ million have been invested in capital needs, and that's really a testament to finance and testament to you all as a board as far as the capital improvements. About $9.5 million, I believe, you approved last year for roofs and HVAC. And then over $15 million has been invested this year in the building plan. And then there's obviously the $3 million that's appropriated for our capital needs, which Justin presented on, I guess, a month or so ago. So as far as future budgeting, some things we want to be mindful of, and we're going to continue to firm up these numbers as we go forward. I think you all shared and we've shared, just we've got to continue to look forward at where it is we know we need to head. Safety, you see, continuing to look at capital improvements, need for secure entryways in several of our schools. So, in a perfect world, your visitors, directly into the front office, and so, that's something that we have to continue to look at and how we get there. Technology, continuing to add devices to meet the needs of our students, and then also I'd point out this line right here that. When Don and his folks start to really look at the support we provide, anytime you add more technology, you're going to have more issues, and that's just something you got to be prepared for and deal with. Right now, we're at 1 to 4,000. Industry standard is 1 to 500. There's very few districts that are at that number, but how do we get somewhere in between there, or at least drop that 4,000 number some as we continue to add devices. And then capital. Again, that deferred maintenance number continues to stick out there at us as we work forward. And then something we've got to be mindful of is new building operations. So as we bring East Hamilton Middle online, we bring Howard Middle online, we bring some of our new schools online, it's going to take money to operate them. And so we have to continue to look at staffing and administrative needs and things of that nature within building and operations, and we'll continue to put real solid figures around that. As far as instructional program, I've mentioned most of these, but continuing to look at the arts and looking at ESL, looking at counselors, obviously continuing to support through interventionists and academic coaches and things of that nature as we continue to grow and continue to meet the needs of what we've heard from the community. That is a desire that we know is important to you all as a board. But just the takeaways again, been very, very open about this and put it out there. It's on our web. Every single thing, line item detail. Had a lot of busy evenings but it's been very helpful for us to get a strong pulse on what the community says is important. Our base budget start number is $1 million below what it was, and it's a balanced budget that has commitments to the areas that are important, really to the community for you all over the world. So, we just want to take some questions.
Okay, board, questions, comments? Ms. Thurman?
Yes, I have a few comments. It's $5.5 million for salary increase and potential one-time bonus. That's the first time I've seen that number. Where did that come from since Tuesday morning?
The $5.5 million is the total salary funding. It takes $2.2 million for every 1%. Last year, instead of doing 0.5%, the board chose to do a flat $250 across the board.
But I thought we were at 4 point.
We were at 4.4, and then the additional 1.1 million of revenue that we described is.
So we get the revenue, so we're going to give it out in salaries. We got the additional revenue instead of taking care of our deferred maintenance, which is the elephant in this room. We're just going. This is why the community. Why we have such a bad name. I mean, we do all this stuff. We talk about rebranding, renaming, redoing this, redoing our logo. Like this is going to help. It's not going to help anything. This is what hurts us. When we get a little bit of extra money to fix up some of the schools, this is what we do. Now, if you think for 1 minute the county commission is going to look favorably at this, they will not. I've been around a long time, and I will tell you, a lot of everybody in Hamilton County just got a big property tax increase to help us build schools and all this. And we went to the commission and we begged and pleading for money. And we got money. And now we get a little bit extra money and we're just like drunken sailors. Why don't we take care of some of the things that have been plaguing us for years? We have schools that the people in this central office over here, every time they need a floor replaced, it gets replaced. Every time somebody trips and falls on the floor, we replace the floor. Every time somebody wants an office painted, they get it. Every time somebody wants a new piece of furniture, they get it. We have schools that the people in this central office would not work in. And we get a little bit of extra money. We do not have to do this. The people in this county just got a property tax increase. Everybody don't get a raise every year. I don't know what world the people in the school system live in, but it just don't happen. A lot of people are taking pay cuts. They don't get an increase every year. We gave a salary increase last year. We gave a bonus last year, and I'm looking at the difference in salaries of some of the counties around. You would think that we were paying $10,000 a year less than some of these. I mean, some of these are just a few $100s. We're more than, I think, Knox County. Do you think people want to pack up and move to these other counties for a couple $1,000s a year? Our bonus package, our benefit package has to be worth something. It's a whole lot better than a lot of these schools have. That's why a lot of people choose to come to Hamilton County because of our benefit package. So, we play loose and fast with some numbers here, but I'm telling you what, we need to take this money instead of giving a raise, we need to put it in block grants to our schools so they quit begging parents for money. They're already having to spend out money on their property tax. And now they're going to have even more. Every year it seems like the expenses get more and more and more. We need to give this money to the principals, let them take care of some of their issues in their school buildings. Give the parents a break for a change. You want to talk about getting people to like your school system better? That's the way you do it. I've been in the people business for 42 years, and I will tell you, I've been hearing it for 42 years. I know what people want, what people expect. And it's not just every time we get a dollar, we feel like we have to spend it and give it to teachers. Teachers are not teachers are important, but so are firemen, so are policemen, so are counselors, so are bookkeepers, so is everybody else. It takes more to run this county than just a teacher. And everybody deserves a piece of this pie, and it's not fair for us to keep going back to the parents for money time after time and just keep telling nobody. You wonder why teachers don't go in the teaching profession? Because you poor mouth all the time. You tell what a bad profession it is, how much work you have to do for no more money than you make. Who would want to go into a job like that? You shoot yourself in the foot instead of telling them how, how empowering it is to teach a child to read, how great it is to see students teach. All we hear about is how underpaid they are. And it is time that we, like I say, fix up some of these schools these kids have to go to. Yeah, we're finally getting some maintenance done, like at Sunny Daisy Middle School. But I tell you what, Sunny Daisy Middle School in this county right here is one of the worst schools in this district, in this whole county. Sunny Daisy Middle School has been treated like a stepchild for years, and finally they're starting to do some work up there. But the very idea that it got to the point where there were snakes climbing through the walls of that school till we got something done up there is absolutely pathetic. And then people were worried about spending a few $1 million on to give raises to people when our students having to go to schools like this. I'm sorry, but like I say, I've been here a long time. I've heard this. I told somebody earlier, I said, I know we're going to go and hear the same song, 2nd verse or 10th verse, or 12th verse. It is for me now, 13th. And it's the same thing every year. Knox County talks about Hamilton County's benefit package, how much better it is. Well, they have to fix that. And then something else is better at this district. Something else is better at that county. We can't just keep chasing our tail. We just need to keep our focus here on Hamilton County and look at what we pay, what the average salary is here in Hamilton County. I really don't care what it is in Rutherford County. I have a brother that lives there, and I know their cost of living is a little bit higher than ours. Rutherford County is not important to me, even though one of the people I love more than anybody in this world lives there. And so, what they pay their teachers. We pay what Hamilton County can afford to pay their teachers. And if people here want to go to Rutherford County, let them go, because there's somebody at some of these other districts that will let them come here and teach. But I am just not going to ever vote to give all this money out in raises. Like I say, do another $1 million, well, here, we'll give it out in bonuses. We need to look at things like, I talked to you about the cafeteria workers. We need to increase their starting pay. Not just give a raise so that the people at the administration gets a whole lot higher percentage than the people in the cafeteria, because every time I say something about a raise, I say, well, people in the cafeteria get it because I know that I think they're underpaid. We need to fix that system, that salary scale in the cafeteria to help those ladies. We don't need to do it in the form of a salary increase so that people in the central office get a lot more than they do. I just don't like it at all.
Okay. Other comments, Dr. Johnson?
Well, I just a couple of things. One, it's 5.5 million salary increases, and I think duly noted the cafeteria workers and things of that nature. All of our support staff are critical, and we want to make sure we support them as well. Our teachers are key, and I say that as a parent. When you start talking about who's with the child every single day, it's the teacher.
Your parents.
Right. Right, and I think but when we start talking about how we look at teachers, we have to. I mean, we talk about getting great teachers and great leaders, which I know has been a focus of this board. We have to look at surrounding counties because if we don't stay competitive, we keep our ball, we'll lose that talent. But I also want to point out one other thing that I want to tell you is unique for Hamilton County. And again, it's a testament to the board. It's a testament to really us being thoughtful about spending. $24 million over the course of the last year has been put towards capital out of the fund balance, out of $24.5 million. And
I'm sorry, Dr. Johnson, but we're acting like we need to be patted on the back for that. That's our job, to provide a safe learning environment for these students is our job. We don't get patted on the back and say, well, we gave them $20 million to fix their schools. What else do they want? That is not an attitude to have. Every one of our schools ought to be as nice as the central office, and they're not.
Good point. One thing I've been kind of concerned about, and I felt like as spending 45 years as a teacher, I'd like to be paid more all the way through. But one thing that's more important to me, that was to me as a teacher, was I don't have too many students to deal with. I think if we keep the pupil-teacher ratio down, that was important. I felt like I could do a whole lot better job teaching 20 or 25 kids than I could 35 or 38, you know, at secondary level. And I'm concerned that we keep our pupil-teacher ratio. One thing I would request, Dr. Johnson, I would like to see done is when we talk about the BEP has a formula, the adjunct committee had a formula, I'd like to see the number of students with a classroom teacher in each school. I'm not talking about support staff, anything else. I mean the number of students that are with the teacher in every class. That's the only real thing that I can see. Now, I'm not saying support staff's not good. I know they are. But the important thing, with my years, and I've had Coach Galloway and Mr. Testerman also has spent quite a few years, and if you gentlemen think I'm wrong, please correct me, but I think if you can keep the number of students that each teacher is working with down, you're going to have a more effective education. If you think I'm wrong, gentlemen, please tell me. I guess the three of us together have had close to a century and a half of experience. And so, but I would like to see us come up with a number of students with one teacher in one classroom, not counting support staff. That's a more real number of importance to me. And not that I'm not demeaning the role of those other folk at all, not at all. But I think that's a more real expectation we need to look at. Okay, thank you, Ms. Thurman, Dr. Johnson. Anyone else? Comments? Mr. Smith.
Chrissy, I bet I asked you this yesterday, and I bet you answered it, and it probably went right over my head. You mentioned, and I'm referring to page 9 of the document, and you had mentioned the figures that you used here are your best estimate at this point today. I think I heard you say that. Is there any chance that these figures could be less? I know you think, and we're all hoping they could be more, but I guess my question is there any chance they could be less?
This is just a budget, which is our best, using our best information, you know, what we've got. It follows the trends that we've had. The only thing that, so just like we had new information this year about the pilot agreements that nobody knew about, you know, we don't know when things like that are going to happen. The BEP, I expect it, they say the middle of April. Well, I know this seems to be the middle of April, but we still don't have that from the state yet. I believe that this is the best. I believe that this is good, and I believe that there could be upside potential. But for me to say that it would not be less, I mean, I can't say that.
I need you to say that.
Well, I feel like there's upside potential.
One other thing, and again, I know you helped me understand some of these yesterday, but is you, and I appreciate you spending so much time with me and helping me to understand how the step process works. And, you know, I really tried to decipher that document last night. If I get if my paycheck this week is $200, and next week it's $250, I've gotten a raise, okay? So, I do think, in kind of, I don't totally agree with my colleague, Ms. Thurman, but a lot of things I do agree with.
You're entitled to be wrong.
but I do, if they're getting a step increase, okay? The teacher's getting the step increase. And I understand that. I know that not all can get that. But they're also getting the 2%, then they're getting a really good raise. Fair?
Yes, sir. I think we said about half of our people are moving through the steps, so that means half of the people are not.
Okay. If I understood that document, Chrissy, there was very few years, you know, in terms of that 25 years. I know as they had more service and the time between the steps, was more, particularly I think 20 to 25, there was no step at all.
Right.
But, well, there was.
Right. There's several different places in there where you go without an increase, and you're probably right on one of them. I can't remember right now because it goes in.
But the point, I guess the point that I wanted to make, and I've always said that I think our teachers are underpaid, and I stand by that. But they are getting good raises. When we give them a 2% increase, and then they additionally get their step increase, and that happens for those that are moving through the steps. As I understood that document, that happens every year except for 4 years in that first 20 years. Now, I stand to be corrected, but that's why I understood that. So if they're getting a 2% increase every year, plus they're getting their step increase, then that's a pretty good raise every year.
There are 3 places before step 20 where there's not an increase.
Yeah.
And then between 20 and 25, there's not an increase.
Exactly. That's what I said. In those 20 years, every year except for 4 years, in those 20 years, they're getting a step increase. So if they're getting that step increase of 1%, some of them as much as almost 1.5%, as I read through that, plus the 2% that we give across the board, that's a pretty good raise. And so the point I want to make, and I still feel like that the classroom teacher, other than the parent, is the most important relationship in any kid's life. And I think we ought to pay them. I do. I really do. But I think it's important for the community to understand that when we're giving them a 2% pay increase, plus they're getting their 1.5% step increase for every year in that first 20 years except for 4 years, that's a pretty darn good raise. In my 25 years at the Y, I never got raises like that. So I just want to make clear that the public understands that we are taking care of our teachers, and we need to take care of our teachers.
Yes, ma'am.
Some of that, maybe also in educating the public, they need to understand that the step increases are through the memorandum, and what our agreement is with the teacher, with HCDE and with TDA. So yes, we're taking care of them to an extent through the step, but that's also our agreement with them. Like, that's part of the whole state mandate before, collective bargaining, before we got to the MOU. So people need to understand that too. Part of that is a mandate. Second to that, we don't give raises every year. Now, it might seem like that because we did something last year and we were recommending to do what's been recommended to us to do that this year, but we don't give raises every year. So the community should understand that as well. Also, for me, I'm very respectful of the other governing bodies, but it always puzzles me how we are always ridiculed for taking care of our employees, but when the county wants to take care of their employees, then nobody ridicules them, or when, which can't say nothing about the city because they technically don't fund us, but I'm saying when other governing bodies do that, nobody ridicules them, because I feel some kind of way that in public education, you're right, Rhonda, we are always asking for money. We're always asking to do things to educate the minds of our future and the soon-to-be products of society. But we didn't complain when the commission voted to pay magistrates an additional amount of money, and they control courtrooms that send our kids to jail.
Oh, yes, I did.
Well, I'm just saying, we didn't as a board. You may have personally, I know I did, but what I'm saying is we didn't as a board. So what I'm saying is we don't complain when people are trying to build more jails and we're finding all kind of ways to punish our kids instead of trying to do, we don't complain about that, but we're in a place where we can now support our teachers. And I agree we need to support some buildings because I represent 8 schools that their buildings are terrible to an extent. And so I understand what you're saying, but I think we have to always keep in mind, I know I do, and I want the public to understand, I really oftentimes don't put much stock in what the other governing bodies think about what we do when we're trying to do what is best for kids and the people that service them, when they're not thinking about that, when they're making certain decisions either. I mean, our commission, if we want to really talk about what they look at how they can get higher stipend salaries, or how they can, like I say, increase magistrate salaries, but they're not, and the tax increase, I mean, people keep saying that when we got this money to do this capital and maintenance, these new buildings, that was a tax increase. No, it wasn't. They held the millage rate. There is a difference in a tax increase and holding the millage rate. There is a difference. So we shouldn't often advocate or get on the bandwagon for our other fellow governing officials when they say, well, we increased tax. No, you didn't. You held the millage rate is what you did. And they increase, in that case, taxes every year, because every year since I've been a homeowner, I get a little thing saying my house appraises for a little bit more every year, which means they get a little more money out of me every year. And to me, that's an underhand tax increase. So I'm all about everybody staying in their lane, but I think our job is to do what we feel is best for kids and to recommend it, and quit letting Big Brother and all these other governing entities tell us what to do, because we don't get to tell them what to do. And we're elected to do this, and they're elected to do what they're supposed to do. And it's just very frustrating for me, because I make the salary with 2 degrees similar to a teacher's. And you're right, I don't always get an increase, but I work for a private entity. But I would love for my job to give us increases all the time. I mean, they give us an increase and they'll tax it. So then it's like I never even got it. So I'm all about somebody else getting it. If somebody else can get it, because I can't, I'm all about it. But I think we have to think about that, because they do spend a lot of time with our kids, and they do spend a lot out of pocket. And you're right, maybe we should look at block grants and how to figure that out. But in the meantime, we're trying to sustain what we have, because everybody was nervous about this retirement incentive, but now I'm nervous about all the teachers and principals that I'm losing in my district because they're getting up out of here. Because I feel like they feel like they're a little more valuable gone than they are here. And that's scary. So we got to figure out how to get people to replace them, because a lot of them are very good. And how are we going to retain them? And we might not care, or some people might not care on this board about what the other counties are doing. But we do have teachers that leave us every May going to those surrounding counties, including Polk. They get up out of here every year. So we have to think about that and how to retain them, or how to even get them here, because that's the biggest problem. We can't get them here because somebody else is paying more.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Galloway.
Yes, I appreciate everybody's points, and I think they're all worthy. I just want to say, as long as we're talking about the teacher salaries, that this is my 8th year on the board. Since I've been on the board, there are 3 occasions that, with the increase teachers had to pay out in insurance, that their take-home pay has gone down compared to the raise we gave them. I just know that had to be 1 year, and then since I've been on the board, it's had at least twice more. So sometimes when you get an increase, it's not always an increase. I just want to point that out. That's the truth on everything.
Ms. Thurman, you have another comment?
I do. There's a lot of things. People ought to have a $400 million budget. Surely somebody has some questions. Well, that's true, but insurance went up, and that wasn't our problem. If their insurance, somebody has to pay for it, and it shouldn't be the taxpayer, it should be the people that get the insurance. So there you go. But anyway, a couple of things in here also. This transportation compliance manager and transportation clerk router. This board is going to have to get serious about transportation. This has gotten to be ridiculous. We are transporting kids all over this county. I have said this for the last, I don't know how many years. We're transporting kids to magnet schools. We're transporting kids to STEM schools. We're transporting kids to Volkswagen. We're transporting kids to Volkswagen. We're transporting kids everywhere. Buses going everywhere. It has to be a logistics nightmare. The problem is Durham cannot hire enough drivers to cover all of these routes. They cannot do it. We are going to have to stop transporting all these kids, because we're going to get ourselves in a big mess, because there's no way the people that are sitting behind the wheels of some of these buses, the steering wheel of some of these buses, are trained enough and have had all of the safety training that they need, because they're having to hire them too quick and put them in the buses too quick, a lot quicker than I would like to see. The only answer is not paying the drivers more money. It's getting rid of how many buses we have to have so we can utilize the best drivers that we have. we are gonna have to tackle this. Adding 2 more people to the transportation department, it is just not the answer. Because we still don't have the people to put in the buses, to drive them. So we are just spending more money to try to put a Band-Aid on cancer here. I mean, we have a problem here, and nobody really wants to address it, except me, that we are gonna, if people want their child to go to a specialty school, you're gonna have to give up something to get something. If you want them to go to a specialty school that you want them to go to the other side of town for, like I did my daughter, I lived in Fallwater, my daughter went to Wallace Smith Elementary, that's a long way. I took her every morning, and I picked her up every afternoon. So, if you're gonna get something, you're gonna have to give up something. The only schools that I think should have transportation provided for them are vocational schools, and I know we're talking about maybe putting another one on this side of the river. Vocational schools are just a little bit different animal, I think, than the other schools. But people, we cannot keep doing this. We're going to find ourselves in another mess with some more bus problems if we don't address this issue. And just, I hate that saying, kicking the can down the road, I don't know what else to say. But my brother has a saying that says, it's like a rabid skunk, everybody knows it needs to die, but nobody wants to stomp it. Well, we're going to have to stomp it. Somebody's going to have to do something. To handle this problem, we're going to have to quit transporting these kids everywhere. And I know that's going to affect some magnet schools and transportation for some kids that really need to go, that really want to continue going, and that's fine. This is where the philanthropic organizations that always want to help, actually really they don't want to help, they want to control. But they say they want to help, we'll see if they really want to help. Maybe they can go with churches, donate some money to a church, let the church use their church van to transport some of these kids where they need to go. Work with CARTA, do something, but we are going to have to address this issue. I mean, the best route, listen, I never want another day like that, and I know Caritza don't, and I still could cry about it. But we have to do something, and doing nothing is not the answer. Because, these kids, everybody puts their little kids on the bus in the morning, expecting them to be taken care of. And I know some kids have been taken to the wrong school. The bus driver took the kids to the wrong STEM school. He called me and said, I didn't know there were 2 STEM schools. I said, well, you just told me something. I didn't know we were transporting kids to 2 STEM schools, but we obviously are. So, we are going to have to, and I saw that you 2 look at each other like we're not doing that.
I don't know what 2 STEM schools.
Well, he said he took them. I don't know. He said he took them to the wrong school and got them there at 10 o'clock, and they were supposed to be there at 9. I don't know. Those are the kind of issues we get. I really don't care. I don't care if he took them to the wrong school. And the whole bottom line is this: we have too many drivers just having to run and get on the bus and take the kids on a route they've never been on, the bus stops they've never stopped at, and everything brand new in the morning. Sometimes when it's dark in the morning, you can't see. That is a dangerous situation. And this board is going to have to address it. And giving more money to transportation when these could be going to classroom teachers is just not the right answer.
Thank you. I probably have more experience with buses than most anyone in here because I've driven one for about 20 years as a volunteer. I will say this. I would like to see, and I promise you, I'm sorry, Rhonda, I am kicking the can down the road, but I would love to see us have our contact drivers and then eventually have our own bus fleet. It's a lot more effective. I've seen it. If we're going to do that, we have control right now. Durham, and you're exactly right, Durham does not have enough drivers.
Even if they're all contract drivers, we still can't get enough bus drivers to cover all the routes we have. We need to cut some of the routes we have, and the only way to do it and be fair is if you want to go to school outside of your zone, provide your own transportation.
And they're having contract drivers having to be paid by Durham to cover routes that they can't cover now. So,
I just wanted to say something really quick about the transportation safety and compliance. The compliance manager and the router, and I understand what Rhonda's saying. And that's always a complex situation because I was a kid in Hamilton County that did benefit from getting on a bus to go to a magnet school. So I had that experience, and I was grateful because my mama was at Sam's Club every morning at 6 a.m. I didn't have to wait to get there. So that's one experience for me. But I think I agree we do have a transportation issue. I personally struggle with the whole, hybrid model of transportation. I really don't care for the contract drivers in Durham. I feel like we need a one-stop shop. And I'm not even sure if it's a contract driver or if it's us getting our own fleet. People know how I feel about Durham, and it's just that doesn't change for me. However, I do know that since November 21st of 2016, that I have never, and probably will never, and it's okay, catch a break from complaints and calls about Durham. But I also know that we don't have as solid of a process as we need to have to address some of those concerns that we have or we receive from Durham. I also know that I have children that still won't get on a bus because of Durham, and I know that is because of something that was not in place before November 21st of 2016. So, what my community is asking for, and I do know that these positions are coming from a lot of community advocacy about something being put in place, and in the Stand Up for School Bus Safety Coalition, a lot of that the community is asking for a set process and people in place to be accountable. And I know that we often want to say, well, who's accountable, who's accountable? Well, right now, we looking real bad because we don't know who that really technically is. We got a lot of people in place, but we don't really know who that is in place. If it's a HCDE person in place, it's a Durham person in place, or it's supposed to be a Durham person in place, it's supposed to be a tracking system. We don't know if it's a tracking system. I mean, it's a whole lot of gray murkiness over there. And so I think if we can kind of wrap that up and bring that in and kind of put some reins on that, it may be beneficial. Maybe not long term until we probably can get our own fleet or whatever, but I do think that these are needed positions because every complaint, when you back it up, it's missing somebody like these people. And I personally don't want nobody to live what I live with that. I don't want us to live through that as the board again, but I'm telling you, if we don't get something in place, prayerfully, Lord willing, it won't be in District 5, but it'll happen somewhere else. Because you gotta have somebody in place for that accountability piece. And we gotta do it from our end so that we have done what we're supposed to do.
I'm like Rhonda and Carissa. I was on November 21st, 2016, I was on that site within 15 minutes. And I saw some things that made me cry. Those children are the same age as my grandchildren, and I cried. And I don't mind you say I'm 60 or whatever you want to, but I care about those kids. I will say this, that route that I saw that day, that Carissa and several of us saw that day, Jill was there, I know, but I will say this, the gentleman that volunteered, we have a contract driver who is a grandfather, and he volunteered for that route. I'm sure Dr. Johnson knows this. He went in the summer and went door to door to as many parents and grandparents as he could, and he exchanged his cell phone numbers with those people. And he said, he bought a new bus. He was a retired driver that came back in, and he said, I have committed to drive these children until they are out of school. And so I'm going to bring him to the board, Dr. Johnson, and honor him toward the end of the year, either for that. But we do need oversight. And maybe I'm talking out of school. Dr. McDavid would probably smack me if I said it. We put RFPs. We got no other bidders than Durham, right. And we did not have the money to go a fleet. We spent. I urged the former administration to buy a fleet and take over, and we control, have our thumbs on the whole thing. But we had to fix roofs, and that money, that 9.6 million.
It wasn't the pleasure of the body.
Right. Well, that's true. Well, we did have to fix roofs, though. I mean, I conceded that. I didn't like it, but I conceded it. But at any rate, we do need some oversight. And Ron, I think maybe we need to, maybe these routers, maybe someone needs to find out what routes we can do without or cut down on. At any rate, Dr. Johnson, you want to add anything to that?
I don't say.
Mr. Smith, go ahead.
Well, I want to change gears just a little bit, so if you want to speak to transportation, go ahead. Okay. Well, just to change gears just a little bit, I'm thrilled that we're adding art teachers and ESL teachers, and I just think I'm thrilled about that. And counselors, and when we talk about school safety, I think can't talk about school safety without also including the counselors in that. What I would like to know is how were those 7 of each, where were they laying? I mean, you understand our question?
So 2 things, I'll answer that question. I want to speak to Paige just real quick. Obviously I go through collaborative conferencing, so, you know, the money is appropriated to look at what we can do with Paige. That's all part of that process. I'll go back to the slide you're referencing, maybe.
Page 17, I think.
Yeah. Is it my clicker? I think sure the clicker's. Can you take it back to slide 17?
So, to number 7, accelerate student achievement.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll look to stretch those 7 positions as much as we can. It's not necessarily that it'll be, so the one that's 7, we know it'll be 7 individual people is a Yale. So we'll go back and make sure that there's 7 of those. With the arts and with counselors, we want to work with schools, and we want to see some schools currently have a halftime counselor, and they're paying for the other half out of title. We want to stretch those dollars as much as we can. But what we are looking at with the arts and with the counselors is trying to get within the ratio. So we want every learning community to feel the impact of the 7 people that we're hiring in each of those areas. And so again, it's not, as I speak to us, it's not that it's going to be 7 individuals. It might be that we're taking and trying. We want to get 14. We want 14 or 15 if we can make it happen from the standpoint of if it's a halftime at the secondary level, it might be college access. And so you've got college access counselor that's a halftime. How can we stretch that to a full time? At the elementary level, it might be that a school that has a full time counselor, but half of it is funded out of GP and half of it's funded out of title. So how do we, can we take that position and make that a full time and give them that federal back? We're looking at every learning community. We want to make sure that every school is impacted by the additional resources.
So at this point, you can't say, there's going to be an art teacher at such and such high school or such. You can't say that at this time.
What won't happen is, with 78 campuses, 55 schools, what we don't want to happen, because we went around the complete community, what we don't want is only 7 schools to feel the impact of these additional roles. We want every school, as many schools as possible, to feel the impact of the additional roles.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. I will say, maybe it's a good time to interject here that several of us will be going to, on Monday the 16th, the sheriff's having a school safety conference, and several more of us, including Dr. Johnson, myself, some of the rest of you, will be going on the 18th. We're going to the governor's school safety conference. You want to address either of those, Dr. Johnson?
I just think everybody continues to talk about safety, that, the more we're able to learn from experts and take in, really the better. I go back and there's a lot of conversation to be had about the budget, and we appreciate the conversation and the engagement of the board in the process. But I'd be remiss if I didn't take us back to this. If I didn't take us back to say that, it's $1 million. This budget is even before the additional revenue. So when we talk about how we're spending dollars, it's $1 million below the base budget starting point last year. And so the additional revenue just allows us to better align to what the community has said and what you all have said is important as a board. And it is a balanced budget. And so there's not a request for any additional funding at this point. I'm a firm believer that you figure out internally how you become more efficient before you go externally and ask for resources. And so that's what we're really trying to do, and really trying to make sure you see the commitment to the arts, STEM, technology, significant technology increases, and counseling. So it is a good budget from the standpoint of being able to begin to align and to be able to have these types of conversations and this type of dialogue around how, I'm excited to be able to have the kind of dialogue around how do we appropriate dollars. Because a lot of times you're in a situation where, it's what are we taking away, what are we getting rid of? And so we're able to have a conversation about how do we appropriate dollars. And I will say this very candidly, our people are our most critical asset. And if we don't invest in our people, then we're missing the boat. So we start there. And that's true with our budget, 81% of it is people. And then, we look at what other resources we can provide.
Can I ask speaking of SROs, the money that we have for SROs, I don't think we've ever done that before, and if I'm not mistaken, and I know that, are we gonna get any help at all from the sheriff's department, because when those SROs are not in our schools, the county will still be using them, correct? So we're gonna be paying salaries for 2 or 3 officers, and when, in the summer, the county's gonna be using them when we're off on spring break or Christmas break or all break or all other breaks.
Prorate, should be prorated.
I'm just wondering if there's any way that we can get some money out of the sheriff's budget for that.
Sure.
Something that we might need to look at, because, and something that we look at.
Yeah, that's great feedback, and this is uncharted territory for us, to make that type of commitment. We do fund a couple through a safety grant, but this is the first time we're appropriating it to no purpose. But it's needed. It's not it's where we are.
Mr. Smith.
You did mention the sheriff's summit, if you will, on Monday morning. Also, and it just came out this afternoon, there's going to be a town hall meeting. Joe Wingate helped us to arrange at Hamilton Middle High in the theater at 4 o'clock, 4 to 5:15 on Monday afternoon. The sheriff, of course, hosting that, and he's got a national safety guy he's bringing with him, and that's a town hall, so it's welcome to everybody. Monday at 4 o'clock.
After we conclude this meeting, I would like to have a brief meeting with everyone who's planning on going to the governor's safety meeting. We can see about carpooling and saving a little fuel money there on that. Any other points before we adjourn?
Dr. Highlander?
Yes, ma'am.
Just to let you know, I did receive word today that the county commission workshop for the budget will be on May the 8th, which is I believe that's a Tuesday. And it will be at 9 o'clock at the McDaniel building, not the courthouse, because this is just a workshop, and it'll be similar to what they had last year. And of course, the school board are all invited.
I went last year. I'm not sure if I can this year on scheduling, but I think it would be really good if we represented there. Sometimes they have, like Miss Jones referred to, there are some misunderstandings that they have, and I was able to speak up and explain a couple of things that they actually misunderstood, and they said, oh, I didn't know that. And again, you were there last year too. So I think it's very good if any of us that can make that. Anything else? Thank you all for your time and patience, and return. Yeah, that's, I think it's,
Oh, good, okay, well, the one on the 8th is the HCDE, Dan, okay. Is the HCDE.
Made that. I mean, they just said we're having a big
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I don't have time.